Hey guys, how are you all doing? Welcome to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Naruto dates all the women in Konoha village, and others, part 1. So before we start, go check out the author of this fanfic, Demon God of Chaos, link is in the description, also subscribe if you enjoy the video, let's start the story. He looked inside the office of the Hokage, checking to see if she was there. He wanted to ask her for help with a problem he had. He'd seen that there were some people who were just happy with each other, and on the prompting of Iro-Senin, he had reluctantly made the conclusion that he needed some female company in his life. The fact that there wouldn't be any time to make sure that he got a date before a mission made it imperative to ask someone's advice of maybe taking someone out on a date and perhaps doing something more. He watched as the Hokage was asleep at the moment, her hair lying on the desk in slight disorder, making her look like some sleeping princess, which was coincidentally also one of the names she had, as it was Tsunade Haim to a lot of people, including Jiraiya. Tsunade Bachan. His voice came close to her ear, and she opened one eye, looking at his whispered face, making sure that she would be awake immediately. What do you want, brat? If it's about wanting to learn some stupid new, then you're out of luck because being a Hokage is a busy job, and I don't have time to waste on teaching you something. You got Jiraiya hentai for that. She grumbled about something, and a small red stain began to grow on Naruto's cheeks. He scratched the back of his head and sighed. Now was the time to speak and ask her if she could give him some tips on dating. I only wanted to ask you something. Can we talk somewhere in private? He looked around, trying to spot any of the Anbu that would probably guard the Hokage, but found none. Here is fine with me, no Anbu would dare interrupt me when I'm in this room, since they'd probably exit out of the wall by my punch whenever they intrude without being called. What did you want to ask me? She asked, being able to handle almost any question that he possible could give her and maybe coax some good blackmail material out of him. Could you tell me how to behave on a date with a girl? You're the first one I thought of to ask it, since Iro-Senin would focus more on his hentai activities than giving tips about how to do something with a girl. She listened as he rambled on for a bit and then said, after he had finished with a long speech which could have been enveloped with one question. Teach me how to date. I'll teach you myself, then I will teach you everything about how to behave on a date, or else I'll be teaching you some of my prized jutsu moves for the rest of the week. She gave a thumbs up, something which she apparently had picked up from Guy, since he seemed to do it so much and it seemed appropriate in this setting. His eyes glistened with unshed tears, and he said, "Really? You do that for me?" She grinned and said, "Sure, I'm the Hokage, so if I decide to teach someone I consider to be a precious person to me something about social life, then I'm actually pretty sure that nobody would interrupt me. Maybe Shizune would, but I can handle her just fine." She sighed, thinking back to a date which had gone wrong at one time when Dan had asked her out the first time. It had ended with her getting wet in the rain and him getting a fist shoved up in his face for gawking at her impressive bust. "Give me 10 minutes to get ready and I'll teach you all about dating and other things. It would be best if we just pretended to have a date and I'll teach you at a nice restaurant that I know, and please dress in something nice. Get rid of the orange in your clothes for me please. I'll expect you back in 10 minutes. She grinned and then watched as he was gone in a flash, presumably to dress himself for the occasion. She appeared out of her private sitting room for important guests, which sometimes also dubbed as her private bedroom if she were too tired, dressed in a black dress which had mostly kunai concealed underneath it. She'd used henge to transform herself into what she looked like when she was a 16-year-old girl. The only thing that she hadn't wanted to change was her bust, since it would be a bit troublesome if she kept bumping into things, while the henge would give her smaller upai than they were in reality. He appeared 3 minutes later, dressed in some black fancy clothing, which made his figure really show off to the general public. He'll be a heartbreaker if he keeps wearing those. She couldn't help but think that and mentally slapped herself for even thinking about such things while she was looking at him. "Do you like this? And please address me as Tsu-chan. While I'm like this, it's only special people who get to call me that, and I'm doing this especially for you." She paused, gauging his reaction. He was looking at her, a small bit of blood coming out of his nose as he was captivated by her huge upai. "My eyes are up here. First lesson. Never stare at a girl's upai when you look at them, they'll instantly dislike you if you do." She repressed the urge to smugly smile as he looked at her with revulsion in his eyes. "Follow me. Did you bring your wallet?" she asked, and he nodded. She led him towards the restaurant, which usually served a rather nice selection of foods. First of all, she would need to get him off the ramen and have him eat something else than that. It was appalling to see him eat that junk food all the time, and she was about to correct that. Naruto acted like a gentleman, at least he tried to, and ended up making sure that Tsunade was comfortable in her seat. They ordered some rice as a small appetizer, and she started on the lesson. "Now that you've helped your date sit down, you'll want to start a conversation with her about something to get her to like you even more than she already does. In the case you are dating a civilian, you should stick to ordinary things like the weather and perhaps some small things about your shinobi career and some small details about a mission. If you are dating a kunoichi, like you are with me, you'd want to keep the conversation strictly about shinobi things and maybe some small things about the weather. In both cases, it is best to do the exact opposite of what you would talk to the other rank. To kunoichi, focus on shinobi stuff, to civilians, focus on the all-day things, something that interests them in you. She took a few breaths to see him taking some notes in a small notebook and she grinned as she could see a concentrated look on his face. Su-chan, can I practice on you for a bit? You are a kunoichi, so I should talk to you about some shinobi stuff. She nodded and then said. Of course. If I were an unknown person to you, I would just ask you what rank you were and who you were. Naruto cheerfully smiled and said. Alright, the name is Uzumaki Naruto and the rank is genin. And what's your name? He tried to ask in his most Jiraiya-esque voice and she giggled as it sounded like he were some sort of Casanova in training. Tsunade, cage rank shinobi and all around hot eye, if I may be so prudent to say. Pleased to meet you, Naruto-kun. She looked and grinned, looking all like a 16-year-old girl who was just having a bit of fun. Have you gotten any nice missions, as of late? His next question was something that made her pause for a bit and think. Nothing other than finishing huge mountains of boring paperwork, I'm afraid. How about you? Have you done anything interesting on a mission? The rice arrived and Tsunade prevented Naruto from ordering ramen, giving him the command to order something else. Reluctantly he selected an exotic dish which was made out of some rice which was covered in sweet sauce, decorated with some strange herbs and some vegetables, and with meat being on the side. Tsunade simply ordered some sake and the same dish like Naruto's which seemed to be the house specialty. Yeah, there was a mission which was rather interesting. It taught me a lot, so I'm pretty sure that it would interest you. There was this old man that we needed to guard and he was under threat from an A-rank Nukenin named Mamachi's abuser. Kakashi-sensei fought with him, but the guy was disabled by his apprentice who told Kakashi-sensei that he was some sort of onion from Kurigakure. Naruto told the entire tale of his first C-rank mission to her and she smiled and ate a little bit. My first C-ranked mission was to protect some wealthy merchants through Earth Country. Orochimaru in the end managed to convince the merchant to give us an extra tip. She looked at him and he looked at her, fascination visible on his face. Really interesting, Tsu-chan. The next lesson will be to eat your food with some grace and not gulp it down like some rabid beast, something which you are used to doing. Try and use your chopsticks to bring it to your mouth and then chew slowly. She watched how he tried to do that and she giggled as he got some of the rice on his cheek. She felt like a 16-year-old and even acted like it, something which she never thought she could do again. He truly was bringing back the teenage girl in her as she could feel herself thinking about if he had been born some 25 years earlier, then they could have had a relationship. Sometimes, couples will feed their date, but only if they are close, Naruto-kun. Allow me to do that. She didn't wait for his answer and just grabbed a small piece of rice with her chopsticks and then brought it to his mouth and he opened it and ate it. He got the idea quickly and they took turns feeding each other. Unknown to them, they were being watched as Sarutobi Asuma and Yuuhi Kurenai had chosen this restaurant to celebrate some sort of Jounin sensei meeting and they watched a cute couple consisting of the gorgeous girl and the Kyuubi no Kitsune's container feed each other. Kakashi was at the moment busy with staring as his student apparently was putting the moves on that girl who looked so much like that huge busty model that had been on the cover of Icha Icha Paradise last month. All three Jounin gave their full attention to the couple. Do you think they've been seeing each other for some time, Kurenai? The chain-smoking Asuma said. A cigarette was dangling out of the corner of his mouth and Kurenai gave him a displeased frown and said. No, the Uzumaki kid wasn't much of a guy to date if I was correct in my assumptions, although he seems to have mellowed out a bit. She kept silent about the fact that Hinata still liked him as she was curious as to how this date would go. Seeing some guy dating this hot girl and not having a reputation as desirable made her inner curiosity peak and she resolved to just observe them. He really knows how to feed a lad. I don't think that Dan could have done it better than he has. He really has potential to become a great guy if he would just wear the black clothes all day. Hell, if nobody wants him then I'd have a try at him, he's too good to let me walk away. She grinned to herself as he let the chopsticks come near her mouth once again and she took the rice off it, moving her lips in such a way that it could be considered erotic due to the fullness of her lips. To many she was a sex symbol, having no doubt that the boy who was feeding her was one of those that wouldn't do anything with such a picture except putting it in a frame and then putting it somewhere in view. He was amazing for the fact that he still made the effort to remain semi-boyish while his body aged. He may have gained some small maturity, but if he matures even further, then he'd be a Jiraiya with women, but then in the romantical sense, being able to score every night without any trouble. The next thing you are to do after you've eaten dinner and maybe have fed your date is to make sure that there will be something special planned, maybe go see some sights and give her a small gift in order to gain more appreciation from your date." She watched as he became cheerful and said, "Hiro-senin said that people kiss on dates too. Will that be in the lessons or is it simply one of his perverted plans?" Said pervert was looking at his student, seeing him in a fancy and good restaurant with a blonde girl he hadn't seen before. Probably some girl that he picked up somewhere. "I'm so glad that he's finally getting out on dates like I instructed him to do." The old pervert was thinking about some erotic things the moment he had seen Tsunade's chest, and inwardly he grinned that his student would finally get laid. He continued to spy as the couple paid for the dinner, Naruto paying with his frog wallet ending up a bit thinner than before. "Let's go to the park, Tsu-chan. You'll love it there." He began to lead her there, her reaction being some giggles and allowing herself to be led there, knowing that it wasn't such a bad idea. They came to the park, a place where they could see the moon in the sky, it being only a small sickle instead of being full. The stars were blinking still, making it look romantic to them, making Tsunade's memory of a similar date wash up in her mind. She and Dan had made love on one of the benches, coincidentally the one where Naruto was leading her now. She smiled at Naruto and allowed him to dust off her place first before she took a seat. The three Jounin and the Senin were watching the couple as they sat on the bench, chatting with each other about some fluffy stuff. None of them could hear what was being said, allowing the boy to have some privacy, but nonetheless keeping a careful eye on the proceedings. "So your first kiss was with a guy?" She giggled as she could see him already kissing the breeding kid she had seen a few times before he defected to a Togaker. "Well then I shall teach you how to kiss. The lesson will be about a theoretical part and a practical part in which you kiss me. Don't worry too much about it, it's strictly a teacher-student thing." She mumbled the last part and he heard a bit. Kissing is done by people who share affection for each other, be it of a familial kind or romantic kind. It is done by pressing your lips to someone's lips or to someone's cheek, like I will demonstrate. She bowed forwards and gave him a kiss on the lips, making his eyes widen quite a bit as she wrapped her hands around him, pressing her upai against his chest, making it seem like a lover's embrace which made the female jounin sigh as she could see the romantic setting and wanted some love in her life. The kiss was something great to him. He could feel her lips against his, making contact with his lips and making a feeling well up within his body, making him feel like he was floating on air. He loved her and she knew that. Not in the romantic sense, per se, but he loved her with his heart. If only she wasn't so old that she had to hide her true visage under a complex, he would have snatched the chance to get her. Her body seemed to shiver once and she broke the kiss. "How did it feel, Naruto-kun? Do you think you can kiss me?" she asked and he responded immediately by kissing her on her mouth, wrapping his hands around her, letting one slide towards her ass on instinct, and he could feel her beginning to deepen the kiss, a tongue slipping into his mouth. His body acted on instinct, beginning to lash out with his own tongue to tease the girl he was holding, no matter to her own physical reaction. His body was already reacting to the kiss, images swirling in his mind as he could feel her upai pressing against him. "This feels too good with Tsu-chan. I think I really should stop before we do anything foolish." It is as if I can sense her thoughts when I kissed her. That's never happened before, although I have to admit that feeling her thoughts turn into those of Hiro-senin's fantasies with her and me in the lead roles are nice. But it should really stop now before she loses the Hokage title due to sleeping with a minor, something which I still am. He broke the kiss and she moaned for more, not wanting the feeling of peacefulness to go away. "It's really exciting to kiss him. If only I were 30 years younger." She was breathing harder after the kiss, her nipples erect after she experienced the pleasuring feeling that Naruto had evoked from within her. What had been a small lesson in dating had turned into something far more dangerous. She had superb control over her emotions for most of the time, never allowing her true emotions to show on her face, or else she would have been depressed a long time ago due to her love's death. Naruto looked into her brown eyes, looking at the thinly veiled lust and love within them, knowing that he would have to stop. "Shall I bring you back? I think we need to stop this now before you literally take me on this bench, like Hiro-senin encourages me to do." That seemed to sober her up quite a bit, a blush appearing on her face, and she said, "Of course Naruto-kun, let's go back, I'll teleport you there." Before she could do the seals for the teleportation technique, she felt his hands encircle her waist as she stood, and he kissed her neck and suckled on the flesh strongly, creating a reddish mark there, some sign that she was his in a primal way. She did a full body blush as she felt his soft lips on her neck, and when he suckled a shiver went through her entire body, making her feel so hot and bothered at the moment, as it was extremely erotic to her if someone sucked on a piece of her flesh, preferably somewhere where she liked to be sucked, like her upai, but the neck was fine with her too. She made the hand seals reluctantly and felt her chakra being pulled away, his chaotic being also dragged with her according to plan. They reappeared in front of the Hokage tower and she grinned and said, I had a really nice time, Naruto-kun, you should go and find girls or women to date because you really show promise in the art of dating. He grinned and thanked her profusely, even going as far as to offer her the chance to have another date with him, an opportunity which she took with both hands. She walked back into her office, still clothed in her dress and in her adult 25-year-old henge, which attracted the attention of her assistant. Tsunade-sama. Where have you been? There have been numerous new files that need either your signature or you to read it over. She was close to panic and hadn't even noticed that her superior was dressed in unusual clothes and had a rather noticeable hickey on her neck. Tsunade giggled once, her apprentice looking at her as she heard her giggle, surprised that such a woman could still giggle like a schoolgirl. Gomen Shizune-chan. I've been away for a while. Shizune's eyes widened as she saw the mark and said. Have you gone out on a date? Tsunade nodded and said. He's such a cute guy. He didn't even stare at my chest, just talked with me about some of the missions he's done and about the weather and other trivial things. He even fed me. It's been so long since a guy fed me. She looked into the distance, her eyes unfocused and looking like someone out of a romance novel. Shizune just shrugged and said. You have a meeting with the Kunoichi Women's Society next morning. I have prepared some notes for you to read, which is about the lack of dates that the local Kunoichi seem to be getting. I'll handle that, Shizune-chan. Now let me get to bed since it's been a long night and I need all the beauty sleep I can get. Tsunade went off towards her home, intent on getting some good sleep. Somewhere in Konoha an aged pervert was thinking about a way to give some celebration gift to his student, while another pervert was thinking about the lovely girl who Naruto had a date with. The chain-smoking Jounin was currently in the process of lighting another cigarette before trying to read up to some mission he got the day before. The red-eyed woman went to bed, dreaming of having a date with a certain blonde, blue-eyed young man who had been so cute last night. She looked blearily at the assembled woman in front of her and groaned as she realized that she would have to head this meeting between the Women's Association, something about the lack of shinobi men wanting to date Kunoichi. She could still feel the feeling of his lips on her neck and she just stared at the gathered woman, not really registering anything. Hokage-sama. Do you have any idea about any available guys to date who aren't involved with anyone? The red-eyed young woman with the current greatest record of dismissing guys from dates before they had even started. I kinda lost track for a moment, Kurenai-san. I've been a little bit distracted as of late. Shizune looked at her boss, an amused smile on her face. Busy with dating that mysterious guy, I'm sure. This perked the attention of the women gathered there as they gave a look at the Hokage who felt uncomfortable about the looks. I did have a date with someone last night. She grudgingly admitted and sighed as the women got a hungry look in their eyes, mentally screaming at her to give details. Alright, since there is no way you'd let something like this slide, I'll give you the information you want. I was approached by the guy in question as he was feeling a little uncertain about his dating skills. I used a clever henge to disguise myself for a bit since the age gap is rather large between us and I shouldn't let the people get the idea that I'm robbing the cradle. A brief round of laughter went through the group, most women assembled there being around 25 to 30 years in age with some exceptions like Inyazuka Hana and Yuzuki Yugao. After I told him how to do some things, like having a nice conversation with girls and perhaps even making some nice advances with them, we ate dinner and I gave him a few pointers to change his eating style, which was some trouble, but eventually he fed me and I fed him in turn. All in all, the dinner was rather nice. We even went out and strolled through the park for a bit until finally settling down on a bench and kissing for a bit, I teleported back to the tower to finish some work and then went to bed. She finished her retelling and the women looked at her and said, "Who is he? It's rare that guys want to hear about our side of the date, never mind them asking about dating." Hana spoke, her voice carrying some disbelief. "He's a very special guy, Hana-san. Very special. He made me feel like I was 16 again." She grinned as she thought back to yesterday's events, knowing that if she asked him to go out with him, that it would be met with some small amount of disbelief and surprise from Naruto. "You were that girl who was eating with him?" Yuuhi Kurenai spoke up and Tsunade gave her an appraising look and then nodded. "Yes, I was there in that restaurant with Naruto-kun. You should have seen him when he asked me to teach him about dating. His entire face was all flushed and looked so kawaii." She blushed as she thought back at the blushing face of him and the women all stared at her, surprised that their Hokage and current leader of the Women's Society had gone out with the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and had done so willingly to teach him something about dating. "Alright then, since my student doesn't want to confess her love to him, I guess it's time for me to make my move. Uzumaki-kun may be a bit young for my tastes, but if he can give me a date which goes like yours, I'm all for dating him, that is, if I ask him before Hinata-chan does." Kurenai finished with a grin on her face and then added, as a final thing. "We can all date him, of course. He must have great stamina since he beat your brother in the semi-finals, Hana-chan." The girl grinned and said. Sure, I can't blame you for dating someone Tsunade-sama thinks as good at it he didn't even make her mad, according to Tsunade-sama's report about her date. She gave Tsunade the thumbs up sign and then went to think about several things which are totally not related to anything that would be discussed within the meeting. Alright then, it settled. Since the rest of the male bastards would only use us for fulfilling their perverse feelings, we'll give Naruto-kun a shot, especially since almost no girl of his age group will give him the light of day due to some crazy loon babbling about the Kyuubi being locked inside him just after Naruto-kun returned with the Uchiha. Hinata-chan may still carry a torch for him, but I think she's about to lose courage. She gave the rest of the women a smug smile and said. He's mine tonight, Hokage-sama, make sure that he gets a mission, preferably A rank, to take me out, and that I'll not be the one paying for the food. She grinned as the Hokage stared at her, confused by those words, and Tsunade spoke with a puzzled air to her voice. You want to pay for a date with Naruto-kun? Kurenai shook her head and said. Nope, all I want is a date with someone who can be gentle and kind and not an obnoxious pig like most men and that chain-smoking bastard Asuma-team. She scowled at the mere thought of the man who had repeatedly tried to get her to go out with him. She had gotten a reputation for her icy demeanor from most people as she glared at every man who came in her direction, although she barely did that well with her genin team present. Naruto was currently in the process of pulling on some clothes, black this time due to Tsunade's advice. It was really something that she'd managed to change his clothing style and some things he had been thinking about girls. The date they had had was something out of Iro Sennin's books, and he was glad that it hadn't escalated into something erotic since he was way too young for something like that. He headed outside, knowing that he would once again have to deal with the hatred which the village seemed to be so fond of, directed at him. He looked and only received cold glares at him, and still he smiled, knowing that he would someday rise above all this and do something worthwhile with his life. Either he left the village, thus probably making it a day to be celebrated in Konoha, or he would go insane and kill off all the people in the village with a few notable exceptions. The fact that there were still people who at least were nice to him kept him going all the time. The people around his age may have found out that he harbored a demon within him, but the older generation didn't know that they knew. He walked into the mission room, hoping for a solo mission, which would be dangerous and be able to get him out of the village. He really wanted to cause some major killing to relieve some stress. At first he had been averse to killing, but after realizing how freeing it was, he began to feel at ease whenever he killed someone. In the village he just settled for eating a huge amount of chocolate, but once on a mission with the objective to eliminate certain parties, he would also massacre a few street gangs to relieve himself of his bloodlust, which had grown even worse over the years, a possible detrimental effect of Kyuubi, or so he thought. He looked at his Abachan, and he noticed the way she was grinning at him, which either meant that she liked her date last night and wanted more, or had an extremely pleasurable thought, which would involve him going on some mission to relieve her from the paperwork menace. Uzumaki Naruto, follow me. She remained businesslike throughout the entire time he was in the room, and he followed her without any question, knowing that she was probably about to hand him some dangerous S-ranked mission, something which made the bloodlust ignite once again within his veins, making him crave the thrill of battle. Naruto-kun, there is a mission which requires your utmost attention. She spoke the moment they had entered the room, a grin on the older woman's face. She was going to like this. The mission is rather out of the normal scope of your shinobi duties, but you'll be compensated for it. The mission is to take Naruto Kurenai out on a date and make sure that she has a good time. Do you understand? She looked at him and he straightened up and said. You really want me to test my skills, don't you? Either you told all the women about my dating lesson, or that woman likes me just because I showed some skin to her when I sparred with Dog Biscuit. He flashed her a grin and then continued talking. Of course I'll do it, I'm not one to forego a mission without proper reason, and if I get to have a date with one of the prettiest girls in Konoha, I'm all for it, although. He got a sad look in his eyes as he thought back to his fruitless efforts at making sure he got a date with any of the local kunoichi and failing miserably at it. They shunned him now, his chances of ever getting a date flying away from him like a scared bird. She looked as he was still looking at the ground, trying to come to terms with the fact that he was supposed to go on a date with a woman who was either called a hot foxy lady or an ice queen. When do I need to come and get her? He asked, and then raised his head to look Tsunade straight in the eye, checking for any emotion, but finding none. Around 7 p.m., Uzumaki-kun. The voice spoke, and Naruto turned towards a shadowed corner where a woman materialized, having hidden there through Dot. Kurenai-san. He looked at the woman who gave him an amused glance and said. You were right about him, he's one of a kind. Even if you don't know his personality, you could ever fathom that this kid would be the first one to take me out on a date, which I have allowed him to do. She gave the Hokage an amused smile before walking out the door, a strange grin on her face like she was planning something. Kurenai, you know what, you have that really disturbing grin on your face. She turned towards the speaker and noticed that her best female friend, Anko, was standing there, a stick of dango in her hand and in the process of being devoured by said woman. Yeah. Want to explain the reason? She gave Anko a cheeky smile before the disturbing grin came back on her face. No. But that the woman began to walk towards her home, humming a small tone which had been soothing to her mind, making her more focused on the task which lay ahead. Selecting an appropriate dress. Naruto stood outside of Kurenai's house, a small bouquet of flowers in his hands, after he had taken the suggestion from Tsune to mind, and had bought them to make sure that there would be a nice impression. He had made sure that his hair was arranged in a pattern similar to Kakashi's. The blonde locks seemed to be making him look older and mature, also adding to his natural beauty. She looked at herself in the mirror, congratulating herself for choosing the right dress for the occasion. She didn't know where he would take her, but guessed it was someplace fancy where the dress wouldn't be out of line. According to Tsune, he did have a way with getting you to the kind of place you hear about in novels, where you could fall in love at first sight with someone. She had a feeling she was going to have a great time tonight. She opened the door and looked at him, taking in every little detail about him. She couldn't believe how much he looked like the late Yondaime, who had the same glint of determination and courage shining in his eyes. She looked him in the eyes, knowing that if she did that for too long, she'd just drag him into her room, probably rip her dress, and make love to him for the first time, probably relieving him of his virginity, as well as relieving herself from that very same thing. Shall we go, Naruto-kun? She was taking a wild guess that he'd like to be called that, and to her amusement he blushed and then held out his hand, as if to guide her, something which made him rise a few notches in her eyes. She liked a man who could be gentle with her, not unlike those orcs who had tried to date her before and didn't have even the slightest bit of decency. One who would lead her to a place where they could eat and converse, would be one worth keeping about for at least a few weeks, maybe even promoting him to the status of official boyfriend. He led her to a restaurant which looked fancy and then asked for the table which had been reserved for him and his date. The waiter looked at him with a disdainful look and almost sneered when he saw that the demon did have a reservation there. They were led to a table where they both sat opposite of each other, looking at each other before even turning towards the waiter. I'd like to have some fruit juice, waiter-san. Kurenai's voice was soft and almost seemed to be fragile, but the burning crimson of her eyes gave her a ferocity which went unsaid throughout that statement. Don't you dare to ruin my date or I'll make your life a living hell. She hated it when people picked on others and used them as a scapegoat for their troubles, like the people of the village had done to Naruto-kun. I'll have the same, waiter-san. The waiter sneered at him, giving him an evil look which was only given to him about 100 times a day, and he was used to it. Very well, sir, madam. I shall be with you shortly. The waiter went away probably to get their orders, and Naruto looked at the woman who gave him a very amused look and said. You handled him pretty well, Naruto-kun. There was some small amount of progress to be made with the date which seemed to make him somewhat anxious. Kurenai-san, don't you like me or is there something that displeases you about me? The manner in which he spoke made her look at him and give him a rather charming smile and said. No, Naruto-kun. I'm simply thinking about ways to improve my English. I may be a mistress of that art, but there is still room to improve upon. The density of the illusion could be adjusted to make sure that the target is engulfed within the with no escape possible for their minds, allowing for a quick kill. Can I use one on you to test it out? She gave him the puppy dog eyes, which made him weak in the knees as he found himself unable to resist those eyes. Sure, go ahead. He gave her a rather cute smile due to him being caught off guard quite a bit by the question. Arigato, Naruto-kun. She made a few hand seals, and then Naruto could feel how the chair underneath him seemed to transform into a bed of living snakes, and the surroundings around him changed to become a jungle setting, with Kurenai still sitting there, like nothing was amiss. Then suddenly her entire looks changed, somehow making her look even prettier when her clothes seemed to be replaced with something which should not be worn in public due to how small the furry bikini she wore. She studied his face as he looked at her, enthralled by what she had put upon him, making him think about a jungle with him sitting on a bed of snakes, with her dressed in something that would make any male have a nosebleed. To his credit, he only blushed a deep red, not getting a nosebleed, unlike all the other males who had talked to her. He's definitely above normal standard if he doesn't have a relationship with anyone. I just might take him for myself to resist. That is almost impossible for any straight male, especially if myself makes her clothes disappear and I nose straight. He looked on as the version of his date began to remove the bikini, exposing her chest to him, making him turn red in the face as he looked at the rather attractive side of Kurenai's chest. He blushed and looked down, trying not to stare, but he couldn't completely suppress the small smile that came on his face, the only sign that he liked what he saw. The reaction in his pants was luckily not visible, something he was thankful for, because she just might make him experience her version of hell if she saw it. But the snap, he was brought back to reality to see the woman in the seat opposite to him looking at him with a dreamy look in her eyes. "You tried not to stare," she said, a small amount of admiration and happiness in her voice. "That is so sweet of you." She couldn't help herself. She had gone to the date with the hope of finally meeting some guy who would be a gentleman, knowing that he probably wasn't, but still tried. He had surpassed her expectations, resisting the urge to ogle her, and even going as far as to show almost no reaction, except for a cute smile which made her heart warm up and her breath quicken slightly. Is she thinking about kissing me? He didn't really know how the female mind worked, but from the woman's reaction, he could see that she was clearly slightly attracted to him, if the way she spoke was any indication. She addressed him with a slightly familiar term, making him a close person to anyone who didn't know who they were. She moved closer to him, smelling his scent in the air. It was something unique to everyone, something which shouldn't be faked by anyone, since everybody had a different scent around them at all times. Naruto seemed to smell like a mix of something primal. Her hand reached out and stroked the back of his hand, touching the skin and feeling how warm it was. She didn't even know why she did it, just to feel his skin, wanting to at least touch him and feel him before he either pushed her away or let her continue. "Naruto-kun," she suddenly said, her voice making his insides like jelly, making him experience a fit of nervousness within his stomach. He looked at her, noticing her deep crimson eyes, gazing deeply into them, his eyes turning a deep crimson too without him noticing, slits appearing in them, so much reminiscent of the Kyuubi, as the raw feelings washed over his body. They didn't know who started first. They moved closer to each other, and their lips met, a frenzied kiss ensuing. They acted on instinct, not really minding the other people in the restaurant, just lost in the heat of the moment, kissing each other. Kurenai felt the kindness and the spirit that this young man had been endowed with within her entire body, making her feel surprised, as she could feel herself blushing at the kiss. Naruto was blushing too, as he realized who he was kissing and what she looked like. This really is my lucky day, or no, week. I get to kiss with two lovely ladies, both of them who are older than me. Iro-senin would be in heaven if he were here. The fact that nobody could hear what Naruto was thinking, or that a pervert would take a keen interest in whatever was on his student's mind, nevertheless the position he was currently in was a good thing, according to Naruto. If Iro-senin could have seen what he was thinking, things might not be as good as it was, making his life probably a lot tougher to handle if word got out that he was dating someone, never mind the ruckus that Jiraiya would make if he heard that he had dated Kurenai, the Ice Queen. Jiraiya's pav. Ah, finally a bar which won't throw me out whenever sit next to a nice woman and ask her 3 sizes and if she would go out with me. The old pervert was slowly walking towards the restaurant in which his student and the lovely woman were sitting, and his attention was drawn to the sign which spoke of some sake contest being held there that evening. The name of the restaurant didn't seem too important to him, and he stepped inside to look towards the bar. The man took a seat and ordered some sake and began to try and drink away his worries with some of the good stuff until he caught a snippet of conversation. That demon brat kissing that woman. Some gesturing was made by an irritated waiter, and Jiraiya moved his gaze until it fell upon the side of the kissing couple, noticing the blonde hair mixing slightly with the black hair from Kurenai. Damn, the kid moves fast. I wonder who he picked next as a date. Maybe that Hinata girl who was fond of him a while ago, or maybe that girl with the weapons. The couple broke the kiss, and Jiraiya got a good look at the woman who was with his young student, and promptly the cup of sake fell from his hands, unable to be kept in his hand due to the shock the man got from looking at the woman. He just did the teacher of the Hyuga girl. Wow, I think I might need to throw him a party if he loses his virginity to that one. No wait, a monument to defrosting the Ice Queen would be better. The old man looked at the couple who had resumed chatting, eventually getting fed up with waiting for their food and drinks, having decided that they weren't going to come anymore after waiting such a long time. Eri appeared in front of Kurenai's house, Naruto having said that the mood was ruined by the food not arriving. Kurenai looked at him with her eyes still slightly misty from the kiss they had shared and said, "Do you want to come inside? I have some snacks if you are hungry." He could see that she was still trying to be hospitable, trying to make him feel nice, while he was the one who had been selected to go on a date with her, possibly by her own order, which was something which was making him a little bit uneasy. But the mission was to take you out on a date. Oh well, I can't say that it went well, but at least I could repay your kindness with another date. Set it tomorrow night if you want. He looked at her, hoping to see her agree with it, but was met with her gaze boring into his, looking at him with her eyes unclouded by anything. I may have asked a Hokage to give you to that mission, but don't presume that I would call it a failure. You've made me feel in ways I have never before. You make me feel like I am years younger, something no man in this village or outside has done, so please come inside, where we can talk without the risk of prying ears. She opened the door, sliding it open, and allowed him to go in first, still trying to be a good hostess. He came into the house, taking a note of how nice it looked. The furniture looked nice and cozy in this setting, and it almost made him want to live here, but he knew he couldn't. "Please seat yourself, Naruto-kun," she said, her voice somehow seeming to come from a few rooms away and not like they were in the same room at all. He turned around and looked at the brunette, taking in every little detail about her nice dress and the way it hugged her skin. Somehow he hadn't really taken notice of it all before, only looking her over once to check if she looked good. He chose to seat himself on a comfortable looking sofa, making sure that it would be comfortable for him. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked, standing next to a cabinet which seemed to contain various liquors and other things people might want to drink if the objective was to get drunk. "I'm afraid I don't drink hard liquor, Kurenai-san." His answer was definitive, and she gave him a look which clearly stated that she wanted him to drink some. Maybe a small taste wouldn't hurt. He looked at the woman who was about to hand him a glass with an orange liquid in it. "It's something that isn't too strong, and please call me Kurenai-chan." She passed him the glass, looking expectantly at him. He put the glass to his lips, then took a small sip of the liquid within, and immediately felt a burning sensation within his throat. To his credit, he didn't spit it out, he just took it like a man and drank another sip, feeling the burning sensation invade his entire mouth and somehow make him feel slightly sluggish in his movements. What he didn't know was that his senses had been primed to perfection by absorbing more and more of the Kyuubi, allowing him to taste, hear, and see things better than most people without a Kekkei Genkai. The alcohol affected him even more than any usual man, making his vision blur slightly. He watched as she took a glass top of the orange liquid, then sat down next to him, looking at him, her eyes slightly apprehensive, as she probably was contemplating something. "Have you ever had an intimate relationship with a girl, Naruto-kun?" she asked him, wanting to find out if he ever had been in one, and if he had any feelings for the women in his life, preferably the ones in his age group, though she would like to see if he would like her, or others in her own age group. Kurenai-sa-chan. "They all shunned me after one of the villagers opened their damn fucking mouth and practically announced to the world that I, the Kyuubi brat, should die." He gave a wry smile as he looked up to the ceiling. "That pretty much destroyed all my chances at having a relationship with any girl around my age, as they shun me. Sakura-sen would know about the Kyuubi since she has access to my medical files, but couldn't tell anyone because of the law. Now I'm pretty much feared within the village, both by my own generation as well as the previous one. Can I have some more of that drink you gave me?" She nodded, noticing that he was quite intoxicated, but didn't really wonder how he got so drunk, and attributed it to the fact that he must have rarely drank, so would be easily susceptible to the rather stiff drink she had given him. She took a hold of his glass, and then filled it with the same orange liquid which made some of her days be lightened, especially after a hard mission. She liked to drink heavy liquor to just get drunk and forget about all the worries of being a kunoichi. She watched as he drank more and seemed to go into a drunken stupor for a few moments, then he slurred. "You are a very pretty girl, Kurenai-chan." He looked at her, his eyes turning as crimson as hers, gaining slits within them, making him look almost like the Kyuubi within him, of course without the tails and the fur. She looked him over, noticing that he was fast asleep after he had said that. "Seems that you really can't stand alcohol, do you, Naruto-kun? But it was fun, just let me take one little peek and see what you are made of." She clearly wasn't thinking correctly when she slid her arms over his body, grabbing his shirt and lifting it a bit, revealing toned abs and musculature which made him look rather advanced for his age. Most people would be a hulking mass with so many muscles, but not Naruto. He seemed to have the grace, a finesse coupled with the agility of a cat, although a fox would be more appropriate in this case. He seemed to be able to have greater strength than Hokage-sama had in her prime, if the muscles on his arms were any indication. She couldn't resist opening his pants and seeing what he looked like down there. "I must have a pervert hidden within me. He's large. This will be so much fun when I tell the girls about the date," adding a small comment about his size. "I wonder if anyone could ever compare to this. Better make sure that everything is right about his attire. If the fox decides to make him wake up soon, I'd be caught red-handed. He doesn't like perverts much. And that's exactly what I would be to him at the moment if he wakes up." She ordered his clothes on his body, zipping up his pants and leaning over and just lying there, letting his hands wrap around her in an automatic reaction he had. He woke up 40 minutes later, confused as to where he was. He could feel a slightly buzzing sound in his head, knowing that it must have been from the liquor he had consumed before. He could feel himself holding something which breathed, and he looked at the thing that was within his arms to encounter a sleeping Kurenai. He gently poked her in the side, making her murmur something about not wanting to wake up and telling him to quit it or get castrated or be put under a dot. He froze, the woman within his arms, slowly awakening due to the fact that her protective blanket aka Naruto had stiffened. She looked at him, making him uncomfortable. "Omanasai, Naruto-kun. How can I ever repay you for my indiscretion?" She looked genuinely sorry and he said, "It doesn't matter, Kurenai-chan. As long as you didn't hurt me, it'll all be fine." He gave her a foxy grin, something which she found hard to resist, and then gently got up and said, "I better head home. Did you have fun, Kurenai-chan?" She nodded and said, "It was nice having a date with you. As for the mission, I consider it done." She gave him a smile, then said, "Why don't you go on a date with some other women? It'll make you cheer up a bit after the betrayal from those you once called friends." On the other hand, she'll pound some sense into their thick heads well into kibbas. And Hinata's Shino doesn't have much of a problem with anyone. He gave her a grateful smile and said, "Please don't do that, Kurenai-kan. It would be rather hard to deal with their glares, but I'm used to it." She wrapped her arms around his neck then gave him a kiss on the head. "If you ever want to talk, my door is open for you, as is Hokage-sama." She gave him a wink and then escorted him to the front door, where she let him out. She looked as he disappeared into the streets of Konohagakure, then whispered to herself, "I will help you, Uzumaki Naruto. If you have to destroy the village to do it, I shall help you. I will help you achieve happiness." He looked at his ceiling, thinking about all the things that could have gone wrong. Did I do well to drink alcohol? Did I do something that would be considered inappropriate to her? He blushed at the thought of maybe touching her inappropriately and then descended into an uneasy sleep. Kurenai on the other hand was sleeping rather peacefully, although a slight flush could be seen on her skin, indicating she was having a rather nice dream. She was currently dreaming about being held by strong arms, belonging to a certain blonde-haired ninja who managed to entertain her the entire evening and had even slept with her in the lightest sense of the word. She could still feel his warmth against her skin, and she would wake up drenched in sweat as the dream took a rather radical turn into something which would make Jiraiya jealous. "So how was it?" was the first question that was asked, and she looked at the speaker, recognizing her to be Anko, and gave the girl a grin, being 3 years older than Anko, and said to tease the girl a bit. "It was nice." The answer was spoken rather airily, and Anko's eyebrows raised a bit, then a sly smile slowly etched itself on her face. "Kurenai got laid, Kurenai got laid. So how was he?" She grinned in a rather psychotic manner, making most people in the immediate vicinity vacate the aforementioned area, afraid of what Orochimaru's apprentice could do to them. "I don't think I should talk about it here, and no, I didn't get laid, Anko-chan. You know that my heart belongs to you, and you only." She gave the younger girl a smile, then kissed her on the cheek lightly. They sometimes acted like a couple to the general public, making sure that no males would approach them. Anko was a typical feisty girl, and Kurenai seemed to be a bit more calm than her friend, but together, they could really wreak havoc when they wanted to. "Didn't Tsunade-sama call another meeting for this morning?" she asked her serpent-loving friend, who looked at her with a bit of a sheepish look. "Yeah, and we're supposed to be there already." She exclaimed the last part rather loudly, having forgotten that it was meeting time for them. They entered the room where the women were sitting, and Kurenai said, a small hint of shame in her voice, "Gomenasai, Minasan. I was a bit late due to meeting with Anko-chan and cuddling a bit with her." The women all gave the young woman an approving look. It was a long-time joke between Anko and Kurenai that the women's club should know about the joke they played on the male population of Konoha and the villagers. "Alright, let's start this meeting. As we had discussed last time, there is a shortage of men who would be able to treat us like we deserve and how we want to be treated by them. In the last meeting, we agreed that Uzumaki Naruto is one of the few guys who would make sure that the females' demands were met and that he is able to be worthy of our love. I myself have been teaching him a little about dating after he asked me. The date was rather enjoyable, and I gave a description last time. The next one to date him was Kurenai. Please tell us all how it went, Kurenai." She looked at all the faces which were looking at her, and she gave a small mental speech to herself to encourage her to talk. "Well, he took me to a nice restaurant which we left without ever eating anything due to the people there being averse to his presence. We went home, and he had a few drinks, as a note. He's easy to get drunk, but don't overdo it. He may be a peaceful drunk, but if he lets the control slip too much, he'll probably turn into something that may resemble it. Not that I saw it, but I could feel the raw lust coming from him." She could see Anko lick her lips and mumble something about fresh meat waiting to be tasted. "I wouldn't even think about doing that with him. Anko the kid's got some stamina packed under his belt if the matches he fought in the Chunin exam were any indication. He still wore that goofy suit he used to wear when younger, but still he managed to last against someone who had been training ever since they could walk in stamina and had some scouting training under his belt. He's your little brother, Hana, so why don't you tell us about him?" The girl looked at Kurenai, a bit annoyed that she had to talk about her little brother. "Alright. For those that don't know him yet, his name is Kiba or Dog Biscuit to the family." That statement was able to make the room collapse in laughter. "You call him Dog Biscuit? Cuckoo. Kurenai was chuckling at the annoying name that her student had, and the women present could see the humor in it and were laughing. They knew who he was, of course. He had made quite a name for himself as being an obnoxious male and had earned the scorn of many when he was discovered peeping on women, something which got him into some trouble at home, leading up him being followed by both his mother, wanting to dispense retribution on their perverted relative. After everyone had calmed down somewhat, the women looked at Hana and Yuga said, "So what did you want to tell us about dog biscuits?" Hana looked at the girl, sighing at that moment, and continued. "Before I was interrupted, more had to be told about my brother. He is extremely focused on himself, believing himself to be king of the world at times. His stamina is good enough to make him last for a while against a jounin, but it would easily allow him to be defeated when one outsmarts him. He isn't very intelligent." He kept on muttering about how Uzumaki-san had defeated him by doing some stupid things. She gave a small snort and said, "Farting to confuse the smell of an Inyazuka really was a clever move due to our noses becoming very sensitive. He may have acted like he didn't know it and probably didn't really know it. But if I can guess, my brother would have been hopping mad at him for doing such a disgusting act while he was fighting. Dog Biscuit does have a lot of trouble with interacting socially, and he seems to be angry, or at the very least resentful of Naruto-san. He kept on mumbling something about an unfair advantage during fights and that he'll show the bastard a few new tricks." She looked at the females in the room and they gave her a look which was slightly confusing her. "What?" He really muttered something about it. "Maybe that's because their generation knows about Kyuubi." Naruto-kun mumbled something about it when he was drunk, something about a villager calling him the demon Kyuubi brat. That must have tipped them off that he was either the reincarnation of the demon or the demon himself, and I think it's too late to convince them of the fact that he's only the carrier. They seem to have gone from accepting him to becoming hostile to him. I think he even cried a bit when he told me, thinking of the anguish that it must have made him feel to see people who he once trusted turn away from him. He talked to me some more, made me see some of his side of the story. He's lost all hope for humanity. Tsunade-sama, I would like to get a mission or someone else to make sure that Uzumaki Naruto doesn't go down the deep end and massacre us all. The changes in his mood were just startling me last night, but I can see in his eyes how the anger and hatred for the villagers and the shinobi bubbles just beneath the surface. And then to think that I trained Kiba, I feel disgusted even now." She looked down at the table, thinking about how things would change around here. Without people his age trying to encourage him to live or not to glare at him for housing the Kyuubi, life would be hellish for Naruto. He still seemed to have Yumi no Ruka as an anchor, but all of that seemed to be burning away ever so fast. She could see how he would slowly descend into an ever downward spiral where he'll eventually either try to commit suicide or just make sure that he'll be able to kill off as many people as possible, letting the Kyuubi take over to destroy the village he loved so much a long time ago. Tsunade was thinking about the same thing. She should have taken him in when she'd been made Hokage, or at least have done something to make sure that he ended up under her care. She would have loved him, given him a nice home with care that he always deserved. He lived in a crappy apartment where he shouldn't be living for keeping the village safe by holding the Kyuubi inside of him. She felt a headache forming and focused some chakra to make it go away. "I'll have my date with Naruto-kun tonight, Hokage-sama." The voice cut through the chatter and everybody looked at the person who spoke. She stood there, her face set in a manner which made her look determined. "I'll make sure that he doesn't kill off the entirety of Konoha. Well, not us, at least the male pigs would be nice, though if I hear anyone scream 'hello nurse,' I'm going to castrate the bastard." Most women looked at the young medic nin, who had just cursed about the men who constantly tried to fondle her and met up with a poison dart in a private part or in an armor somewhere else. They gave a grin at the woman and said, "Of course, Shizune-chan. I give you the mission to go on a date with Naruto and he'll be compensated for it or something to that extent, as he's the one to pay." Tsunade finished the sentence with a small pensive look on her beautiful face. Shizune gave her a satisfied grin and Anko could be heard saying, "Oh, I wanted him for myself. I wanted to teach him all there is to being with a woman." The witch Kurenai answered, "I would have to object to that, Anko-chan." Her friend looked at the woman who savagely grinned and said, "You wouldn't want me to miss out on all the fun. But I'm feeling generous today, so I will let you have first touch, Kay." She looked at the younger girl, then saw the devious glint that entered the girl's mind, knowing that the first touch was usually rather funny to see, as Anko wouldn't really want to make sure that he was prepared. Also, knowing that he was still a virgin and ready to be devirginized seemed to excite the girl a bit, but only some things could go right for another to go wrong. "Alright, Shizune has the next date with Naruto-kun, let's inform him of that now." But the poof on ninja smoke, the room was vacant once more, the Kunoichi having gone to attend to several tasks that had been assigned to them sometime during the week by the Hokage, whether it be some mission or something else. Shizune sat down on the chair next to the Hokage, the other woman also seated herself, then got a huge scroll from a drawer in the desk they were seated at in the mission room, and said. Alright, shall we register this as an S-ranked mission once again? Naruto-kun deserves something extra, so I'll just make sure that whatever money he spends is put into his paycheck. At that moment did Jiraiya enter the room, and he immediately walked over to the women and said. How nice to see you, Tsune-chan. Have you heard about Naruto being on a date with both the Ice Queen as well as some hot blonde chick? This was clearly a wrong thing to say, as Tsunede's beautiful face contorted in anger, and she said. I'm with someone, so cut it with it, Tsune-chan. As a side note, yes, I know all about Naruto's girlfriends, since he has confided in me about them. The older man looked surprised that his teammate was involved with someone, then grinned as he heard about the confiding that Naruto had done with the older woman. Is it alright if I threw the kid a party? She gave him an irritated look. Jiraiya. The tone she adopted was hostile, and the man chose to walk the safe path and said. Just something to congratulate him on the success he had with thawing out the Ice Queen, nothing like the parties I used to give. She calmed down somewhat and said. Okay, but not tonight since he has another date with a girl. She gave the man a grin which clearly stated that she knew all about it, and Shizune began to turn a bit red as she could no longer think about Naruto in innocent terms, thinking about different things like the physical she had given him. She had touched him in several intimate places, him letting himself get touched by her, and she remembered how warm he had been, slightly warmer than any normal human. She got a blush on her face, and Jiraiya noticed and said. Hello, nurse. The reaction was instant. Both Tsunade as well as Shizune leapt forward and tackled the man to the floor where senseless violence ensued as both were affronted by the reaction from the guy. Not my balls. Ah. Get that dart away, Shizune-chan. Don't call me Shizune-chan, you hentai. This was the scene that met Naruto when he arrived at the Hokage tower, looking on as his sensei was pounded into a pulp by Tsunade and Shizune. Shizune was busy with making sure that a certain body part was stabbed by a poisonous needle, something which was causing Jiraiya no end of grief, while he could feel Tsunade's fists, making sure that he would be unable to move for almost an inch for several hours, and maybe be put out of business for a day or something. Save yourself, Naruto. They've gone insane. That earned him another whack in the cheek by Tsunade, and Naruto gave a snort of laughter as the man looked at him with horror in his eyes. Naruto-kun, welcome. I'm glad you came so soon because I've got another mission for you. It's on the desk, just be on time to the house listed and all will be fine. All expenses will be paid for and you just go and have some fun. She gave him a charming smile and knew that she would be either on the receiving end of some teasing from her teammate, but she didn't really mind it when Naruto continued to brighten her day. She liked to spend time with him, beginning to love him even more than she had previously. Helping him experience dating. Something she had enjoyed extensively in her youth was something which made her feel very young again. She didn't feel like a 50-year-old anymore, just like a 16-year-old. But when she was faced with huge mountains of paperwork, including some things which really shouldn't belong there, she felt as old as the Sandaime, the man she had once called sensei. Jiraiya noticed the faraway look as she looked at Naruto and couldn't help but make a remark about it. Thinking of robbing the cradle, Tsunade-chan. She gave an absent nod, the mind still focused on Naruto who walked towards the desk while she was still holding Jiraiya in a death grip, making her head turn to look at the body that had been gifted upon the 15-year-old Uzumaki Naruto, something which was a crime in itself, as she was 53 years old and was now lusting after someone who was so much younger than her. Jiraiya noticed the dreamy look in her eyes, taking a very careful note to check the assistant, since the pricking of his crotch with a poisonous needle seemed to have stopped for a moment. The needle was still embedded within the tender flesh, of course. When he looked at the medic Nin, who was Tsunade's student, he saw the girl looking at Naruto with almost the same expression as Tsunade on her face, something which was making him perplexed by the look she was giving Naruto. They both fancy him. Oh boy, he's going to be in a world of trouble if they decide they want him at the same time. Okay, now to make my escape. But the silent Kawarimi, the man was free, and Tsunade was now currently holding her office chair in a death grip, the chair creaking slightly under the power that was being pushed upon it. The two women were still staring at Naruto, who was quizzically perusing the mission sheet. He looked at it and got a smile on his face. I hope that it will all go fine this time. I'll just take Shizune Nichan somewhere nice, where I'm not judged to be the demon. Ichiraku seems like a nice place to go, but it would be rude. What shall I do? He looked over the mission scroll, sighed, and rolled it up. Time to ask the lady in question where she would like to go. He approached the two women, noticing the way they were staring at him and absently wondering if he got something on his face which made them look at him like that. Shizune Nichan. Where would you like to go with me? She looked at him in awe at the fact that he seemed to want to know where she wanted to go with him. Like Tsunade Sama said, he's different from other guys. She looked at his face, searching for his whisker marks and studying them. She always focused on them to prevent herself checking him out like she does normally with any guy she meets before being dragged off to get Tsunade out of trouble. Well, there is this nice dining place where I've eaten several times and would like to go to again, and please call me Shizune-chan, Naruto-kun. If we are going on a date, we'll have to address each other like we are close, which we are by the way. Don't you think so? She unconsciously pushed her chest forwards quite a bit, giving him a small bit of a look of her cleavage. While she didn't have such huge upai like Tsunade, she still held a big pair, and Naruto turned slightly red while Jiraiya grinned at the situation. Trying to set him up on dates with several young women, are you Tsunade-chan? I just came to you to report that your interest had been revealed for what he is, the Kyuubi's carrier, and that none of his age would voluntarily talk to him anymore without sneering at him for just being himself. But still I wonder about the young girl that was with him a few days ago. Arigato, Shizune-chan. I'll pick you up around 7 and we'll go there. What's the address? He looked at her, noticing the rather flushed state of the woman and wondering if she either liked him or was running a fever. Shizune gave him the address, also including the advice to make sure that the whisker marks were covered up, as to make sure that no unfortunate things would happen by him being himself and recognized as the container of the demon. Naruto stood in front of his mirror, looking at his reflection as he applied a miner on his face to hide the whisker marks, which would tell anyone that he was the Kyuubi's container. He looked at his reflection, making some small changes to the nose, willing it to be somewhat smaller. Suddenly the reflection changed and his eyes turned red, a sign that he was slowly losing control once again about the beast sealed within him. He looked in his reflection with red eyes and said, "What do you want, Kyuubi?" A deep chuckle came from a place where he had been rather frequently, and a deep voice answered, "Centuries of madness and killing lusts within it. Why don't you just enact your revenge when you finally reach the upper limit of your patience? I can already feel your mind beginning to act more violent, more impulsive, and feral. Don't get me wrong, I like the change, but you need to act a bit more aggressive, even though you don't want to act aggressive out of fear of massive riots on the streets, demanding your blood. The betrayal of those close to you was enough to almost push you over the edge, so conquer a few women and finally get some." Kyuubi was urging him to have sex. He didn't know anything about it, having had no such education while under the pervert who didn't really care much for his student and occasionally taught him some stuff. Well, he did care, but he still acted like he didn't care. Naruto could smell the fear about something bad having happened to him on the man when he had disappeared one time, and that it made him feel at ease that the man wouldn't scorn him for being him. "I will, even though I might ask someone to teach me the basics." But that he quit talking altogether and then made sure that there were some small touches to his hair, making him look mature while still looking like a young teenager. He dressed in his black clothes once again, having put them into the washer and dried them afterwards with some Kyuubi chakra, which did wonders for drying things up due to the raw ferocity of the chakra, which generated heat due to some insane mechanism which Kyuubi had tried to explain to him using some blue flames and some normal flames. He hadn't gotten it, but Kyuubi summoned it up in one sentence. "Just accept it like it is, kit. It's hot and you can use it. That's it." The demon fox had gone back to sleep then, leaving him alone with his thoughts, and he began to experiment with it a bit, trying to make it so that it would be making a useful weapon. When he opened the door to go outside, he saw that there was someone waiting for him there, an old man who had a bit of trouble walking due to the casts that were on his body, which was something that was broken beyond recognition, then patched back together. "Naruto, I've got some news for you. Why don't you try to put the moves on Shizune-san while I watch? I'll give you special training if you jerk." The fist slammed into his head, making it go sideways, and the man looked at his young student who stood there, a look in his eyes, which seemed to be a mix of determination and burning passion. Of the first thing Naruto probably was aware, but of the latter he wasn't, something which was evident within his stance. "Don't even try it, Hiro-senin. And don't insult Shizune-chan in my presence, or I'll shove a Rasengan up your ass." "Getting possessive, kid?" Kyuubi's voice within his mind echoed, and the teenager looked at Jiraiya with a stony look on his face and a twitching eye. "How dare you think I would go and do that to Shizune-chan, Hiro-senin? No wonder you're still a virgin if you make sure that you act like that all the time. You just can't attract any woman who likes you enough to even think about having sex with you. They're repulsed by your leering at other women and often shy away from you because you act so stupid. Arg. I should have listened to Kyuubi and flattened you by summoning Gamabunta on your skull to knock some sense into it." He was now raging at the man who was currently looking at him with something akin to terror, as well as understanding within his eyes, as he heard his student list everything that he found lacking in his sensei, and knew it to be the truth. Suddenly he was reminded of a bet Tsunade made with him 35 years ago. "I'll date someone if you ever try to act gentlemanly and get a girlfriend." He grinned and said, "Get ready for your date now, Naruto." I won't bother you anymore." The old pervert was gone with a flash, limping away into the direction of the closest bar, on a mission to go and get a girlfriend or something like that. The author of Icha Paradise should be able to get a girlfriend, no. Naruto was a bit anxious as he stood in front of Shizune's house, looking at it with some nervousness. He knocked once on the door, hoping that she was okay. A crash sounded and the door slid open, revealing Shizune standing there, looking pretty with her dress a bit rumpled, it being red and accentuating her upai quite nicely. She had fallen over a few moments ago when she heard him knock on the door, and in her hurry to get it had stumbled over a piece of furniture, anxious to go on the date. When she opened the door she could see the young man already standing there, looking at her with his normally cheerful face, which was looking rather serious at the moment as he looked at her with a critical eye, knowing that there wouldn't be much to see, in her humble opinion. She did have quite a bad image of herself, feeling ugly in comparison to her master due to the blonde woman having bigger assets and looking better even without the henge applied to make her appear young and youthful to everyone. She looked at him, his face still scrutinizing, hoping to pass the inspection with a good image and not like some bloated cow, which she knew she was. In one word she could be described: stunning. He looked at her and saw that she was absolutely gorgeous as she had applied some makeup to her face, making her look even better than normal in a different way the Kurenai and Tsunade had been. He could see that she was also one of the prettiest women in the village, going by the fact that there are several women who are literally untouchable and are supposed to be gay, not that he had paid much attention to the rumors lately. He just hoped to find out that there would be some small trick to dating, but had instead gotten a mission assigned to take several women out on a date, Shizune being his third date in a week, including the one he had with Tsunade as one. "Shall we go, Shizune-chan?" She nodded and he took her hand, gently leading her towards where the restaurant was situated. She had told him how to get there and had even given a good description of the restaurant, making him think about something different in style. It was somewhat modern and seemed to have those weird dishes like something that looked like fried shrimp with some fried noodles. He looked at his date and grinned at her and said, "Shall we enter, my lady?" It was one of the lines he had gotten from Iro Sennin's newest Icha Paradise book, something that he had read in a fit of boredom, excluding the erotic parts due to sickness being generated by the damn thing due to its perverted nature. "Of course, Naruto-kun. Let's see what they have for us, shall we?" She looked at the doors, as if hoping he'd open them, and he did, a smile on his face. He looked like any regular teenager now, cheerful and happy and not depressed at all, but she knew it to be a facade to fool the villagers. If he didn't have the henge on, he'd be glared and spit on by the villagers. They sat down at a table, the waiter coming to them immediately. It wasn't a fancy place, but it did have a waiter, due to it being a popular place to get dinner or a quick bite to eat. "How can I serve you, sir, madam?" The man looked at Shizune with his eyes zooming in on her upai, making Naruto growl in some desire that came from within, making the man's attention snap to him, and Naruto ordered a glass of rice wine, having acquired a taste for it, since he and Iro Sennin sometimes shared a few drinks of it to make sure that they kept their identity. As shinobi is secret when staying in different villages. He had been made into the little brother of Jiraiya, the old man portraying as the eldest son, who was of legal age and who continuously tried to make his little brother get drunk, something which was common in most non-shinobi people to have your little brother get drunk before his 18th birthday. Only then you could make sure you weighed up to be a man. She was somewhat surprised, but ordered some rice wine too. While training and living with the slug Sannin, one would have to get used to drinking it, and she had acquired a taste for it after her first 3 months under Tsunade's tutelage. The moment that the drinks arrived they both were wrapped up in a conversation about the Anbu. "I don't really see why they are so great, Shizune-chan. They look kinda stupid with those weird masks and they act all cold to me too, like the villagers do. They need to act that way because nobody needs to know their identity, like anyone could relay the information to another village and then have them assassinated. At your current power, with it aiding you, you could easily take on Hokage-sama if you tried." She looked at him, her eyes focused on the reaction. Now he's probably going to act all smug that he can beat Hokage-sama. He looked at her and said, "I have no desire to beat Tsunade-bachan. I give her the position of Hokage since it's lost all appeal to me." She looked at him with surprise, clearly showing on her face. "You've given up on becoming Hokage?" He nodded and sighed. "I guess they finally got what they wanted, it's only a matter of time until I snapped, the pressure getting to me." He tapped his fingers on the table, a gesture that usually signified that he was irritated with something. The rest of the dinner was spent in silence with her looking at his face, trying to discern any emotion, since it had turned into a stony mask of coldness and devoid of emotions. When it was time to pay, he got out his wallet and then deposited the correct amount within the waiter's money pouch and said, "Let's be off." When they stood outside, he looked at her, his eyes slowly turning crimson. "What are you thinking, hearing me out about my life story?" I don't need a shrink to know that I'm messed up, Shizune. He looked at her in anger for a few moments, then his eyes cast downwards, and he said. Gomen, Shizune-chan, I let myself go for a bit. I don't know what came over me. She looked at him, his face now clearly readable and emanating sorrow and sadness. She wrapped her arm around him and said. Let's just go home, okay? We can talk there about how to solve this mess you've gotten yourself in and about these mood swings you seem to have lately. They entered Shizune's apartment 10 minutes later, Naruto still looking sadly towards the ground, and he said. I really don't need any help, Shizune-chan. I am a monster and I am beyond redemption. He made to leave, but she kept him there and forced him to sit on the couch, holding him down with her arms, applying a gentle pressure which she knew wouldn't hurt him. Naruto-kun, please don't take this the wrong way, but I care for you, we all care for you. Tsunade-sensei, Haruka, and me, we all care for you. Kurenai-san may also care for you. She looked at him, tears suddenly welling up within her eyes as she thought about him leaving. Please Naruto-kun, don't leave the village or let the village get to you, please let me help you. They have wronged you, and for that they should pay. I saw you once as a little brother, but now you are something more. I didn't want to admit it to myself, but you've turned from a little brother into someone who could be my lover. She looked at him, noticing the shocked look on his face, and kissed him on the lips, burning passion echoed within it for so long. Please Naruto-kun. It's been so long that I don't even know how a man's touch feels like, please touch me. She grabbed his hands and placed them on her upai, making him blush as he felt the flesh under his hands, feeling the warmth of it against his hands. Wow, Shizune-chan is really forward in this thing. I don't want to do this, even though my body says otherwise. I want to wait until I am ready or at least know how to do it. He looked at Shizune's chest, sighing deeply. I don't want to do this, Shizune-chan. He spoke with a sincerity and maturity in his voice that momentarily made her surprised at it, looking up to meet his eyes, which seemed to shine with something that is surely something like determination and finality. Her eyes widened as she looked into his, a sense of shame coming to her. I almost asked him to do something without knowing he'd enjoy it. I almost raped him, going on my feelings for him entirely. She shrank back from him, tears welling up within her eyes, and she mumbled. I'm so sorry, Naruto-kun. Is there any way I can do something to make it all alright again? He looked up to her and said. What should you have done wrong, Shizune-chan? He looked at her with such innocence that she couldn't bear it anymore and threw herself into his arms, wanting to have some comfort at least, before making sure she was exiled from Konoha for almost raping a minor, something which still had some laws about it. He held the crying female and said. Don't worry, Shizune-chan, I just didn't want to do that now, maybe on a later date, but I wouldn't want to do that on the first date. He looked her in her eyes and he gave her a reassuring smile and said, maybe next time with someone more mature than me, you will be able to do the things you want. She looked at him, her eyes not really focused, and mumbled something about wanting Naruto instead of somebody else, which the Jinchuriki heard, and a blush resurfaced on his face. She wants me instead of someone who is older and probably more handsome than me. Wow, I never thought that she would like me in that way. He gave an awkward cough and she looked up at him and said. Yes. Is there anything I can help you with? He scratched the back of his head with a sheepish look on his face and said. I didn't mean to insult my previous words, but I felt like it was a bit too soon. Still good friends. He looked at her and she bowed and said. Arigato for your trust, Naruto-kun. He gave her a grin and said. No problem with Shizune-chan. I know that I'm so sexy that girls just want to touch me. Correction, women just want to touch me. None of the girls my age want to have anything to do with me. His expression saddened and he hung his head, sighing deeply. I guess I'd better go have a nice night, Shizune-chan. With that he pressed his lips against hers, kissing her for the last time that day. He gave her a look which was sad and then got up and said. I'll see you later, Shizune-chan. With that he left. Thanks for watching my video and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description. See you next time, till then sayonara.